You're listening to the Co-Creator Network. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Oh, I'm so excited today for the show. I'm Dr. Jennifer Howard, and this is A Conscious Life. I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you for coming and taking your time to be here with us. And I hope that as we all listen to these great guests, and I have someone here today that I'm just beyond excited about, we all grow and move toward having a more conscious life. That's the way toward more freedom and happiness. So follow me today at Dr. Jennifer on Twitter, hashtag A Conscious Life, or Facebook / Dr. Jennifer fan page. Well, I want to cry. I'm so excited with our guest today. First of all, I want to thank you all for all your wonderful comments before we get started about my book, Your Ultimate Life Plan. I'm getting amazing feedback from you guys, and it's becoming the finalist in several awards. So that's exciting. And this gentleman that we're going to talk to today, I am so grateful for his lovely endorsement and his energy and who he is, and you're going to be thrilled to hear him today. And I know you're going to want to go buy all his books if you don't already have them. His name is Guy Finley. He's a best-selling author of The Secret of Letting Go, The Essential Laws of Fearless Living, and 38 other works that have sold over 1 million copies in 18 languages worldwide. His work has been featured on hundreds of radio and television networks, including NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, NPR, and PBS. Guy has spent the last 30 years showing individuals the authentic path to a higher life filled with happiness, success, and true love. He lives and teaches in Merlin, Oregon, where he is the director of a non-for-profit Life of Learning. It's guyfinley.org. He also teaches sometimes at Omega and Kripalu on the East Coast. He's, of course, in Oregon on the West Coast, and we're over here on the East Coast. So if you want to catch him on the East Coast, check out the calendar listings for when he comes east. So I want to welcome warmly, yay, to our show, A Conscious Life. Guy Finley, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. It's nice to hook up with you and have a chance to talk.
Yes, it is. We're going to be talking today about your most current book, The Courage to Be Free. And if people don't have this book, they need to. You know, it's small. It's deceiving. You think, oh, this is a quick read. It's chocked full of little juicy tidbits that I went, oh, wow.
Good. Sounds good to me.
You know, I have a question, just an overall question for you. Do you make up these stories on the spot? You're amazing with stories.
Oh, basically the answer is yes. I just have found over the years of talking to individuals that we tend to respond well to stories, parables, because they allow us to, make contact emotionally, intellectually, and intuitively with stories. So I love them, and I'm a storyteller. That basically, I started in this life before I began writing books. I was a composer, and most of when you're a songwriter,
yes,
that's what you do, is you tell stories. So I guess it was second nature.
Well, and you grew up around, I know I read some of your background too, you grew up around TV and theater and people acting, and so that kind of writers and directors and that kind of world. I kept trying to find some songs that you'd written. I went online, searched everywhere. I couldn't figure out. Tell us a song that you wrote.
Oh, gee, Jennifer, there's a lot. I wrote music for motion pictures, television. My partner and I were the first white soft rock artists at Motown Records. And then I moved over and worked with Neil Diamond on his prestige label at RCA. So there's really a lot. You should be able to find them fairly easily, but you also have to remember that was back when they didn't have automobiles.
I know. I'm close to your age. I grew up then too. I love Motown.
Yeah. I mean, most of the people that I wrote for, most people don't even know anymore. But, I had music with Debbie Boone, the Four Seasons, Billy Preston, Diana Ross, Jackson 5. So there was a lot of good times back in the days in the 60s and 70s.
But you really kind of went searching early. I did too, actually. I began my search for something deeper early too. But many people kind of did it at midlife. But you really said, in '79, I think is when you went out looking, and you were, 20 something. You weren't that old. So what kind
Yeah.
of took you on that journey?
Well, the truth is, I started looking when I was about 8 years old.
Ah,
There were so many contradictions in my life. A young
yes,
mind really can't make sense of dysfunction. It just sees there's conflict, fear, anger, and in those days, growing up as I did with the children of, the Arnezes, the Sinatras, the Minnellis, Martins, you're around people that everybody basically throws themselves at, and
right.
then when you're in the private times with these people, you see them throwing themselves on the coals, and it just makes no sense. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, I really started asking questions, even of my parents and my relatives, when I was 8, 9 years old. I said, "What's going on?" And they'd
Mm-hmm.
always say the same thing: "Everything's fine. Don't worry. You'll understand when you grow up." Well, I didn't want to grow up to understand why a person should live with fear and anger. And so I began literally writing at the age of, gosh, Jennifer, 11, 12 years old. I started writing.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. So you really kind of incarnated this life, I think, with the wisdom
Well,
to know there was more or something, or the
yeah,
questioning.
yeah. I don't like to talk about stuff like that, but I had a lot of experiences as a very young person
Mm-hmm.
that made it evident that my life was going to be used
Mm-hmm.
for something different than what I imagined it would be. And I think everything that took place was just the necessary training to be able to express the ideas that now are, the basis of my work.
Well, what's so beautiful is the depth and the simplicity at the same time, and I aspire to that, the depth and the simplicity. Sometimes I have the depth and still the complication with the depth. So I love how you can do it in such a and also I mean, we're going to get to it. I have it dog-eared and marked up and everything, but some of the ways you said things were big ahas for me. And I've been around the bin a few times myself. I was like, wow, that's so fascinating, and I'll get to some of those in a minute. But
You want to hear
um,
something? You want to hear something beautiful, Jennifer?
tell me.
It never stops.
I know it's cool, isn't it?
One moves, in a manner of speaking, from this aha where I don't really intellectually understand it, but my heart just exploded into the marriage of the mind as it begins to comprehend with symbols and concepts what the illumination was. And then no sooner does the heart and mind become integrated with this revelation than by the very existence of the new integration, you move into another level of consciousness where you just go through the exact same thing again. And you begin to
Yes.
realize, like when Christ said, "My Father's kingdom has many mansions," that this journey is a journey of self knowledge. And the more integrated this self knowledge, the freer we are. The freer we are, the more able we are to move into discoveries that would have knocked us down. Things we wouldn't have imagined that need to be seen suddenly become our willingness to see them. And just a beautiful, beautiful process.
Guy, do you see that happens? Like writing this book was a huge plateau for me. I mean, a huge, accomplishment, and I grappled with so much just to get the words clear
Yeah,
on the page.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and then and now I feel like I'm kind of going into a new growth spurt. Even, like, oh, I'm ready for this next kind of whatever. And does that make sense?
You know, there are laws that govern all of this. And just as we can look out and see the four seasons that govern the earth relative to her movement through our system, so does the soul, if you will, move through seasons. Literally on a daily basis, we can see them. But a person goes through a growing stint. They work very diligently, and in a manner of speaking, there is a certain kind of rebirth where the marriage of my mind and heart takes place. I'm able to express what has touched me. But now, by the very fact that these ideas, these insights have been incorporated into my being, I don't have to think about them anymore. But now this heart, this mind begins to reach for the next level. And it goes through after a fruiting, a full summer, comes a fall and a winter. And one must know that those are all natural, and be patient. I call it learning to be watchful instead of willful. So yeah, there's a real pattern to that.
I loved how I'm jumping around. I know I want to go through it because I want to make sure I don't miss anything, but I still rush. I do the rushing thing. I do. I do. I rush. I gotta get it done. It done. Whatever it is, the it of today. I have to get it done.
Yeah. That in certain terms, Jennifer, I think it's fair to say that spiritual maturation, meaning growing up spiritually, is inseparable from psychological saturation. One has to get to the point where the feelings of being anxious and rushing, wanting to accomplish things basically for the sense of self that accompanies it, you have to go through those things. We are, for many, many, many years, more than one can say, actually, the unwitting instruments of a simple movement of desire, where the object of what I believe I have to do or get or move through so overcomes my consciousness that I believe I'll die unless I satisfy this object my mind has said is indispensable. And then you run the race, and at some point, I call it, you cross the finish line. In other words, you do one more thing, rushing to get through it. And then instead of the peace of mind and the sense of well-being that is part and parcel with living in true presence, you just hear a starting gun go off again. And you go, oh my God, I don't want to run anymore. I just ran. When do I get to rest? But in order for an individual to truly find, and I call it the rest in freedom, the rest in creativity, you really have to get tired of running where Jennifer tells you to go, because she can't take you anywhere. That nature really can't take you anywhere other than gradually helping you recognize that really, the next challenge isn't going to be the race that I run, but sitting the race out to see if there's something better right where I am than where I think I have to get to.
Yes. So that's where it brings us right around to the courage to be free, doesn't it?
Indeed it does.
Mm-hmm. So talk to us about this title of this book, The Courage to be Free.
The reason I entitled it that is because the real act of transformation, of spiritual growth, awakening, rebirth, whatever name one wishes to give it relative to their discipline, it is born out of one thing and one thing only. And that is the gradual recognition that who I have been can no longer serve me. And it's the revelation of that discovery. Much as you said, who I have been, who Jennifer has been, is the nature that says, hurry up. It's the nature that says, find someone to blame. It's the nature that says, my happiness is on the other side of the hill. That nature, while we grow up, go through the changes we do, we have no choice, really. Part of our education, in truth, is running through the relationships that desire advocates as being necessary for our development. But at some point, we realize that while all revelation serves the process of introducing us to parts of ourselves that we wouldn't know otherwise, this desire thing and what it tells us we have to do and be in order to feel whole doesn't know anything other than the next thing it tells us to do. So we go through all these relationships inwardly to finally come to the point where we realize what I must do now is, instead of answering every desire and every relationship it drives me to, now I must become conscious of desire itself. Now I must see that in this instance, and sorry to be so long-winded here.
No, it's good.
Maybe, my whole life I've been touchy when it comes to what I think people are disrespectful of me. Listeners, you pick something yourself, but we'll take that. Because I grew up around people who would never let anybody criticize them or say anything denigrating. And I saw the way they handled things like that was to attack back or to somehow seek control over these individuals. But when you begin to become conscious of the fact that when you attack somebody, you wouldn't even think of doing that if there weren't something in you that felt like it needed to be defended.
Right.
And then you begin to think, well, wait a minute. Am I going to spend my whole life defending myself? Because, you can get 100 people to be nice to you, and then 101 comes along, and you're back to square one fighting again. So then you realize what has to happen here isn't my attempt to deal with negative people. I need to wake up to the part of me that believes life shouldn't have them.
Exactly.
And so what has to happen is I see that while that part of me served me up till this point, it doesn't serve me anymore. So instead of doing what it tells me to do, which is to demand respect or fight with people, instead of doing that, I become watchful of it in the moment it appears, instead of letting its will dominate me and drive me through one more race that I can't win. Then I die to myself, Jennifer, in the truest sense of the word. I realize that nature, who Guy was, it can't go on. It doesn't serve me anymore. And when we really see that parts of our old nature, our old self, if you will, these patterns don't serve us anymore, then when they appear and demand service, there's only one thing we can do with them, and that's to become the observer instead of their action machine.
Right. That's when you talk about the inner company, that chapter on relationship, about the outer relationship with people and the inner relationship with our thoughts and feelings.
Yes, because the courage to be free means I finally recognize that when I walk into a situation and I'm disturbed by it, the situation didn't cause the disturbance.
Right.
It revealed the part of me waiting to be disturbed.
Exactly.
And if it reveals the part of me waiting to be disturbed, then that event is my friend, not my enemy.
Right.
And if it's my friend, but it's going to be painful to be friends with it because it requires seeing that I'm on a constantly disturbed, like DEFCON 3, then that means it's going to take courage to sit there and let this thing go through its routine without me being its instrument.
Right.
So there's the courage to be free, because what we have to let go of is not people, not conditions or circumstances, but rather the part of us that believes who we are depends upon them for a sense of being complete.
I love what you say here on page 59. You say walk into, because I'm so all about this in my book too, walk into what you'd rather walk away from.
Yeah.
And persist with what you know is true for you until all resistance to your new action prove itself a lie. So we have to do that again and again, where I get upset that somebody does whatever they do, and then I have to look at myself and say, well, I can choose to be upset about this and this and this, or I can, historically do some work on it or let it go, right?
Yeah. I mean, imagine what would happen to you, listeners, everyone, if you really understood that it was impossible, for instance, to be afraid in any given moment of anything, were it not for the fact that prior to the thing, the event that seems to be so scary, within you was awakened by the event something that goes, oh my God, no, look at that, so that you identify with the resistance you feel to the event. And instead of recognizing that the reality is a projection of this resistance,
Right.
you believe the event is to be blamed, so that you can begin to make this point to realize that all of these negative states, the appearance of them, is really based in a certain unconscious mechanical level of the mind. An awareness of that mechanical movement, just like when you were a kid. I mean, for how many years did that pumpkin that started laughing when you walked by it scare you? Maybe the first couple of days. But gradually you see a pumpkin laughing or scaring, trying to scare you at Halloween. It's just a machine. So you're not afraid of it anymore. So it's true with these negative states, with fear, anxiety, worry, doubt. They appear in us as they do because there is a part of us that is revealed by the moment that doesn't want us to know about it. And so it blames the condition in order to blind us to the level of consciousness then disturbed.
You say here so beautifully, instead of reliving old reactions that take you nowhere, your path will become one of ceaseless transformation.
Yeah, that's it. Because you increasingly realize that, and we'll go through this simplistically. When we're drawn to something or someone, what do you think, Jennifer, is the main attraction to whatever relationship we're drawn to?
Well, for my money, it's our childhood wounding. It's our template for our programming that attracts us to it often, because we either it's familiar to us or we need to heal it, and it's familiar to us.
Well, there is that avenue, which we'll get to, the healing part. But look, I look out my window and I've got 7 or 8 deer, as a rule, waiting out there for me to come out and feed them. And I love to look at these deer. I love being around wild creatures. Perhaps a person loves the ocean, or they love looking up at a night sky through a telescope or with their bare eye. Why? The simple answer is because when I look at certain things, when I'm drawn into a relationship with them, those people, those places, those conditions, they awaken in me in that moment something that, were I not in relationship with that object or person, I wouldn't be conscious of. So the relationship introduces me to, actually gives cause to a discovery of what I wouldn't know was true about myself if I weren't in that relationship. Can you see that?
Absolutely. I'm feeling it in my body when you talk about it too.
Yeah, so we're drawn to the people we're drawn to on a what we'll call this positive level, because when we're around them, boy, they stir up parts of us where we feel love and the wish to sacrifice, all these beautiful positive elements that ordinarily we're not conscious of. So we're on the same page here, right? All right, now the courage to be free. Let's turn this around. Why is it, on the other hand, when I'm around somebody that sets me off, when I'm in traffic or a line at the bank that's going to take until 2020 to move, why then, in that relationship, do I blame the event instead of realizing the exact same principle holds true? This relationship in the moment is to help me realize parts of myself that without that relationship I wouldn't know are there. And here's the rub. We have been conditioned to believe that there's such thing as a bad fact about us. That our impatience, our fear, our anger, our doubts, that these negative states somehow prove that there's something wrong with us. And so the minute they appear as the product of a relationship in the moment, an unconscious part of us that's intimately connected to that negative state itself jumps up and it says, oh no, you wouldn't be like this if it weren't for that. And this is where it takes courage to recognize that every moment, the basis of it is revelatory. The purpose of an event is revelation. The purpose of revelation, positive or negative, is integration.
Right. Yes.
Right? So that the more this integration takes place, when we're not deflecting these things that we don't want to see in ourselves, the more the healing takes place, because now we're no longer fighting with our own consciousness. We're in the process of letting this new awareness unify it.
And we can feel that in our bodies right now as you're talking about it. That's that truth that just sits inside and goes, oh, yeah.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. And you want, you want, but think about how nice this is. So we're talking beautiful stuff, and we feel these truths. I want you to imagine, listeners, that you can have the same feeling in an unwanted moment. Where, yeah, because it's something you don't want doesn't mean that love isn't present.
Right. It's just giving you that opportunity to see that next place.
Yes, and to allow this very awareness that has been stirred up in you of that unwanted condition to turn it into something that is an invitation instead of seeing it as an antagonist. And of course, the invitation is for this process of integration, where that which was formerly hidden in me, maybe I got abused as a child, maybe my brother got a break, I didn't. I mean, fill in the blank. We can make a list a mile long of things to whine about. But what if we could turn that bitter wine, excuse the play on words, into the water of truth? There's a sort of a reversal, isn't it? From water to wine, but now from WHINE to the water of truth.
Well, I was just thinking, when I was feeling it as you were talking about it, that when you're able to tolerate and face whatever arises, the difficult whatever situation, that feelings that come up in us, then you're able to hold that, and you're able to hold the possibilities that arise out of that. Yes. Then you kind of melt into that bigger context that holds it all in that moment, and those boo-boos don't feel so big.
Boo-boos. Look, let's get the listeners something they can work with. And will you agree with me, Jennifer, that in fact, it is impossible for a person to get angry about something, fearful of an event, whatever it may be, that the predecessor of the actual negative state is the appearance in me of resistance to whatever it is I blame the negative state on. So that resistance is the predecessor to negativity, psychological negativity.
Right.
I'm
not accepting it. I'm resisting it rather than accepting it and being with.
So that means that the power in the moment isn't in the event. The power is in the fact that I unconsciously, immediately identify with this unwanter inside of me, this knee-jerk no that appears with any moment that seems to challenge an idea or an image I have of myself. Can we agree with that?
Yes.
Now, can resistance learn? If I resist a condition, can I learn anything from it?
Not to resist it, but no.
It's impossible. If I resist, what I resist persists, period.
Right.
That's the same as saying, and listeners, please write this down. Resistance in its truest form is the seed of repetition. It is the reincarnation of the very level of consciousness producing the condition you don't want. In the New Testament, Christ says, resist not evil. The Aramaic translation of that passage is, do not oppose what opposes you. So when we realize that this moment where suddenly up comes this big no, this big resistance to whatever it may be, it seems to be what someone is manifesting, but in truth, I can't separate the reaction in me from the manifestation in the person producing it. So I can fight with people, or I can work to become conscious of the part of me that is awakened by that person. If I won't oppose its appearance, then what begins to happen in that moment is I actually realize this is a mechanical part a conditioned aspect of my nature. And I don't have to defend a conditioned nature. Why? Because it isn't really me, or more accurately, it is a set of old possibilities, and by its dominance in the moment precludes the existence and the awareness of new possibilities, just waiting for me if I were to wake up and give way, if you will, to that understanding.
So it makes me think of clients. I mean, we all do this to varying degrees, but there's some people who really do, repetition compulsion. They just keep drawing it. So the answer is, I mean, from being a therapist, the answer is to look at more deeply what that is. But from where you're sitting and what you're talking about is to realize there's something else besides that.
Yeah.
and lean into what is greater than that.
Yeah, we don't look, the mind can and will bring up 1,000 associations with any negative state in order to justify the existence of the pain. We don't want to justify the existence of the pain, and we don't want to identify with the part of the mind that can produce all of the reasons for the pain. We want to be directly conscious of that interior condition. Then the past is no longer playing a part. Look, it seems, I call it revisiting the scene of the crime. Why in God's name would I want to revisit, as all of us will do? I have a fight with somebody. So now the next thing I know, for a year or 100 years, I get engaged in this dark dialogue where I revisit this argument that I had with somebody. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. I think everyone does.
Now, why, Jennifer, do I revisit the fight?
I think on some level I'm trying to solve it, but it can't be solved from that position. That's what you're saying. From that mindset, it's insolvable. You can't solve it.
Not only can it not be solved, but the very act of returning my attention to the condition that has been formulated in my mind, the object that was produced through the experience and loaded with the content, the unwanted content, every revisitation simply strengthens the victim's sense of myself. It does nothing to reconcile. It builds the case of me being someone who actually was, in fact, brought into that situation. Now, did it happen? For sure. Do I need to relive it? No. What I need to do is to see that there's a part of me that can't wait to go back to that moment so that I can feel the whole thing again and then try to escape it one more time through yet one more solution or quip or smart answer that I didn't have then, but now I got it. And if they were alive, by God, I'd let them have it.
Now, is this when you talk about chapter 9, never feel sorry for yourself? This is kind of where you are with that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is no greater waste of a human being's potential to transcend himself or herself than self-pity, than rolling around in your past. See, the trick of the mind here is that when the mind, this lower part of this divided mind, when it revisits something from our past, I don't have work. I can't get rid of this situation that happened to me 20 years ago because it contaminates all of my relationships. Fill in the blanks, listeners. When I revisit it, I revitalize it. But the problem is I don't really know who I am without this process, this repetitious pattern that brings up this pain. Because to the point, when I am drawn back into this painful moment, it feels as if I'm in the present with it.
Right. Psychological time.
Yes. The problem is the pain is present, but it's produced by something that no longer exists. So trying to deal with something that no longer exists generates present pain. And I wrote a little poem. and maybe it's in this book, The Courage to Be Free. When it comes to these negative states, here's what you need to write down and think about in the moment of that appearance. The poem is simple. The feel is real, but the why is a lie. Isn't that simple?
Yeah.
The feel is real, but the why is a lie. I'm sitting having my coffee, and I pick up a magazine, and there's a picture of some handsome, bearded boy with 6-pack set of abs holding a cocktail and a beautiful woman on his side. In that moment, my mind goes back to that point where something happened to me, and now I don't not only do not I don't have a beard, I don't have any hair.
Yeah, we all lose all sorts of things, don't we?
Whatever it is, in that moment, can you see the feel of resistance? What am I resisting? That I'm not this anymore, or that I can't be that. So the feeling comes, now the adrenaline comes in, the anger about what happened, the sense of depression, those chemicals begin to draw you down. And the feel is real, but the why was produced by a mind imagining itself as being different than itself. So the why is a lie. Now, instead of going to figure out how I can get an injection of something or go back to the gym and I'm 104 years old, I couldn't have a 6-pack set. I mean, instead of doing all that wasted attempt to gain power,
right,
I recognize the issue here is that I'm agreeing to be powerless by identifying with something that has no reason to exist.
I'm just taking it all in, and I'm struck by you. This is why this book is so thick and it's short. Almost everything you say could be a quote. I'm just struck by that. I mean, I'm looking at a list of quotes here of yours, and so much of what you say is so rich. It's so rich.
It's you know what? But here, look, let's turn this around. Why is it rich? It's not rich because of Guy.
Because it's truth. It's true.
It's rich. That's it. It's rich because it's true.
Yeah.
And if it's rich because it's true, that means that the same riches live in you.
That's right.
And if the same riches live in you, so does the same source of those riches.
That's right.
And if the source of those riches live in you, do you believe for a minute that that intelligent wisdom wants you to spend your time rolling around in limitations produced by negative imagination? It's ludicrous. So all of my work, Jennifer, is to just bring about in the individual a gradual remembrance of who and what they are, and that we're not here to spend our time being the servant of a fear, a worry, a hatred, a greed, or for that matter, even a passion. Because when we wind up being so identified with one thing or another, that means that our identity actually is established in the existence of what we have become identified with. Change the conditions, and all of a sudden we're in danger, we're fearful again. We want to become aware of the part of ourselves that lives above the conditions and the identity that finds itself through them. It can be done. We're here to do that.
I tell you what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling sad, and I think sadness is because so much of what you're saying is so important, and so few people understand what you're saying. I mean, I know you have a lot of people follow you and read your books. I don't mean that, but I mean in the world in general, just the suffering of the world, the suffering that we all suffer, everybody. But
I know. Isn't it wonderful that we can begin to understand that along this real path, all of our existence as individuals begins to serve something greater than whatever our individual conditioned selfish interests are.
Right.
Because if in fact what we just said a moment ago is true, then when I am willing to have this courage to be free, meaning I won't turn my head from that moment where suddenly I see something I don't want to see about myself. I won't blame the teller at the bank for my impatience.
Mm-hmm.
That when that light is there in the presence of that unconscious darkness, that unconscious nature, that not only am I giving myself up for the sake of this integration and the subsequent healing, but the teller doesn't have to suffer my manifestation.
Right.
And,
Yes.
and the rest of the world achieves in scale a quantum kind of healing because my consciousness is your consciousness.
Yes.
This is the hope of the world. This is why the great saints, the sages, the masters that have visited this planet do what they do. Of course, there's sadness in the fact that these things can't be evenly, equitably, instantly expressed so that people can just get it. But that doesn't mean just because you can't give it instantly that someone can't get the seed of it and then through their experience begin to flower in a new way.
Right. This is what you talk about, seeing the good when things look bad.
Yes. Yes. In fact, remind me, or I'll just say it right now. We just published a whole new audio album
Oh,
called,
good.
it's called For the Love of Life, Seeing the Good When Things Look Bad. And Jennifer, let's get one. I want to give you one of those. I know that you'll resonate with it.
Oh,
Do
thank
not
you.
let me forget this gift, please.
Oh, thank you. I love it.
My pleasure. And listeners, if you're interested in that, everything's on guyfinley.org, Finley, guyfinley.org. And including this new material, The Courage to Be Free, everything's relatively very inexpensive. You can spend years just browsing through the free information there. If you want to go further, we've just introduced a virtual wisdom school online where we have online study groups, and the cost is less than a latte. So,
Yes,
I
it
mean,
is.
just there's so many different ways that we can begin not just to acknowledge these beautiful ideas, but what I call to act knowledge, to begin to be willing to be the instrument of this new understanding in the face of the challenge and awaken in ourselves not just the courage to be free, but the source of that courage and ultimately live with it.
Just breathing all that in. So this is an audio series, For the Love of Life.
Yeah, seeing the good when things look bad. It actually, every year in June at the summer solstice, and here's another invitation. We have what we call the Talks in the Pines here in Southern Oregon, where men and women from literally all over the world fly in to take in a series of 8 to 10 special talks that I give on a particular topic. This year it's called Life is Only Real When You Are. And this last album is the talks that I gave at the last Talks in the Pines, seeing For the Love of Life, Seeing the Good When Things Look Bad. And it's just available now.
That's fabulous. So people can come and find out on your website exactly how they could fly in and have you,
Yeah,
watch you give those talks. That would be fabulous. Wow.
yeah.
So
Everything's
it's in
there.
June, right?
Yeah, it's in June. My foundation is located on 15 acres, has old growth pine on it. We have about 40,000 square feet of organic gardens, orchard, chickens. It's a great place to visit, learn about being self-sustaining, at the same time inwardly self-liberated. So it's a marvelous place. Everyone's invited. I speak 4 times a week, and get this out quickly. There's nothing to join. And the talk is a $3 donation that's requested, but no one's ever turned.
I love that guy. I saw that on the website. Are you there? Because I heard a little blip. Okay. Hey, Guy, are you back?
Did I go away?
You went away for just 1 second. But what you were saying, and I want to repeat it for everyone, and I said to you, and we were kind of blipped out, but that I read this on the website. It's beautiful what you do. It's a $3 donation for the talk, and what you said is no one's turned away. Is that right?
That's correct, for the ongoing talks. And the talks in the Pines, which include a lunch at we go down to the river and have a talk at the river. There's a beautiful banquet. There's entertainment. There's 8 talks, meditations, snacks provided. And it's honest to God, it's unbelievably inexpensive. So I just invite everyone to check it out.
Yay! I want to come.
Well, I want you to. You would be my guest, Jennifer.
I want it. We're going to talk about this off air, okay? Because I really do want to come. I would love to be there with you.
Great.
There's so many things. I'm not going to get to all of them today, but I wrote so many things down, and you were so amazing, and we didn't get to a lot of them. But this book, everyone, please go get it. The Courage to Be Free.
You knew we would not have a problem talking.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that. Page 30. I wrote down page 32. Let me just turn and see what it says here, because I wrote down read quote. All right. I said, let's see. Then simply come as awake to yourself as you can and see what you're giving yourself to look at in the moment. That's what we've been talking about.
Yes, it is. And that's the whole point. Is this gradual realization that it's an interior battle, not an exterior condition to win something through. I have a saying that truth is a full contact sport.
That's great.
Because our usual habit, the pattern of this divided mind, is that when stimulus comes in, the mind immediately associates the condition in its consciousness with the content of the world outside. But the content of the world outside would have no impact at all were it not for an immediate resonance with the content in the consciousness reflecting it. And that's where we want our attention in the moment. We look out and we see the world. I actually put together a word, I call it a mirror, which is part mirror, part window. Mm-hmm. I look out and I see you, but if I just see you as the cause of my unhappiness, then I'm not using you as the mirror that you're intended to be. So a mirror is I look out, I take everything in with my eyes, but I also keep an eye on my interior life. So my attention is properly divided now. I'm half out and half in. Instead of being altogether out and blaming everything outside of me for what I'm feeling inside when I have no awareness of what's going on inside at all, other than just this raw, rude blaming of people and circumstances for the conflict I'm in.
Amen. Absolutely. I love this right here too. I don't know that it's a good tag on to that, what you just said, but you said, can we see that there must exist a kind of psychological distance between any dream of happiness to come true and the part of us that dreams it up? Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. It's part and parcel with something that's quite profound if we can get our minds around it. I don't know if you know scripture, and I'm not. I tend to be Christocentric in my teachings, but you can find everything that I'm talking about in all of the major teachings, which I embrace. Christ said, "You cannot serve 2 masters, for you will love one and despise the other." The 2 masters are not separate issues. The 2 masters are desire. Because whatever you want comes instantly with what you don't want. So if I want something, I've got to have this. The minute that I am identified with the sense of self that's produced through the image, now everything that threatens that image, I don't want. So you get this very important context of realizing that when you desire something unconsciously, the very fact that you have identified with this source of pleasure or power, you instantly fear anything that will come between you and that. So the fear of losing something is born the moment you try to gain something.
Because you're stepping into duality. The minute you go into duality, both sides come up.
That's it. Desire is duality.
Right, exactly.
It can't answer itself. If we understood that much, it wouldn't be that we would try to be without desire. That'd be silly.
Right.
But we would recognize that the path to being complete must include being being in awareness of both sides of desire at the same time.
Right.
So that even though I have a plan, a wish, something that I believe will enhance me, make me a more excellent person, I recognize that I am setting in my way the obstacles that will appear with that desire. Now I'm not afraid of the obstacles. I recognize them as being part and parcel with the process of fulfilling whatever it is that I've imagined is important. At some point, we realize that desire plays a role in this life relative to introducing us to parts of ourselves we wouldn't know otherwise, but gradually we outgrow its action because we realize that desire, this duality, already exists in a unity. And that's what self-observation is. It's realizing that even though I'm moved in a certain direction, even though I'm moved, I can be present to the part of me that doesn't have to go anywhere to be whole, because everything is coming to it through events, through revelation and integration.
So we're conscious of the whole at the same time we're conscious of the parts.
Yes. Yes. And that's not only possible, that's what we're intended to do once we get tired of the punishment and the pain inherent in being identified with one side of the equation.
Right. And that's when we get caught and
Yep.
get into the story of whatever.
Yep.
And because we're forgetting the unity in that moment. We're like you said, that part, you say it differently, but that part of ourself, we're forgetting that part of ourself, the unity part.
That's
we're
exactly,
just caught in duality.
Well, the thing is, when we are caught like that,
Yes.
It's very promising. You know, it feels like, boy, this is the way for me to go. I mean, and let's look at it at a more practical level for the listeners. Here I am, and suddenly I read the newspaper, I turn on the television, and I learn that something that I'm invested in, one way or the other, it's gone to hell in a handbasket. Now, in that moment where suddenly this fear floods into me, or this anger, whatever it may be, can we see that with the appearance of this resistance, this pain, this fear, at the same moment, in my mind pops up a whole set of plans. My mind gets fully engaged in what I am being told I have to do to protect myself from what I see. Yes, is that true?
Right, absolutely.
Now, it seems to the mind engaged that way that this friendly guide that has somehow magically appeared in the moment of the fear, that it actually has my best interests in mind. And therefore, I should accept its guidance, act on its plan, and hope for the fulfillment accordingly. But the truth of the matter, Jennifer, is that the guide that appears in the moment of any resistance is, in fact, an extension of this resisting nature. So that even though I look at what it promises me and feel the pleasure of the relief in the promise, if I were present to myself, I would see, without having to think about it, that this guide that's come to rescue me from my sinking ship is actually a great white shark born out of the very thing that's dragging me down. So it's a false god, literally a false god. It promises protection, but at the same time it's promising protection, it's strengthening my identification with the false notion that who I am actually needs to be protected from the event.
Which is not true.
It's not true.
And you can't be anyway.
And you can't. And you can't be anyway. Now, look, that doesn't mean that when there are practical issues to take care of, you do it. There's a saying of mine: do what is in your power, refuse to do what is not. It isn't in your power to change the event, but it is in your power to be aware of the part of you that wants to fall apart because you can't control the event. It is in your power to be present enough to realize that anything fear is telling you to do comes from the world of fearful thoughts and feelings. So if I can just be awake to the fear, then in my presence, I will suddenly be given, just by the fact that I'm aware of the fear trying to misguide me, of a new possibility. I mean, when was the last time, Jennifer, you ever heard fear say to you, hey, Jen, something terrible's happened, so let's not act right away and instead be conscious of ourselves.
Right. The fear wouldn't say that. That would be my higher self or whatever.
Yes. Fear isn't about to tell you to be conscious of your old nature that believes its identity depends upon the continuation of something that doesn't serve you anymore. So to be aware of fear, to come back and reclaim my attention, and instead of agreeing with the plans it lays out, to be conscious of the nature laying those plans out, bang, I've got a whole new possibility right there. I can see that this anxiety is trying to steal from me my possibilities, not serve me through handing me yet one more race to win, to run through.
Wow. And that is the courage to be free. You're talking right there about being the courage to be present, the courage to step forward into spiritual maturity and psychological awareness and letting go, and knowing that bigger presence is always there.
I call the present moment the presence moment.
Perfect.
Because in truth, even though our sleeping mind, our divided mind, can't see it literally, we live in presence. If it weren't for the fact that we were in presence, there would be no daily bread. There would be no creativity, let alone rebirth. Rebirth isn't a time to come. It's the natural outcome of allowing this living presence to have its way with us, so that in our watchfulness, we become the new creature that is actually manifested when revelation becomes integration. So the courage to be free is to live in presence, and in the face of something painful, to remember the first thing I need to do is return into the awareness of this presence, in which the darkness is there, but so is the light that knows exactly what to do with it.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Guy, I hate to tell you this. We're going to have to stop. I hope you'll come back and be on my show again.
You know what? Anytime, Jennifer.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you so much. Connecting to you. I knew we'd love each other, but gosh darn, this is amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. We've had Guy Finley on today, and he's coming back. We don't know when, but soon. We were talking about his book, The Courage to be Free. We're going to have to stop because we have a show right after us. But everyone, thank you for joining us. I hope you got half as much out of this as I did. You'll be in good shape. Thank you so much again, Guy.
You're welcome, Jennifer.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Let me know any questions, comments,